So, room full of HR people, so I'm going to make sure I say everything non-PC, because that's...
Yeah.
All right, right over the head. Open it up with a laugh. So, I want to start, I'll just introduce myself. These chairs are so tall. I think he ran to the restroom. There, he's coming now. So, I'm Aaron. I'm part of our business development team here at Strategic Factory. Work alongside Ashley and Andrew, who you all have met, and then our marketing team as well. So I want to introduce our panelists. To start, the people that are way more impressive than I am. My bio is just I work in BD. Their bios are very long. So to my right, in order of 1 to 4, I have Jaya. Jaya is the Director of Human Resources at Blind Industries and Services of Maryland. So Jaya is also a recent BBJ 40 under 40 honoree, congratulations, with certifications in interrupting bias in hiring and SHRM CP. As a creator of successful employee engagement and development initiatives that translate to bottom line growth, Jaya has been helping companies attract and retain top talent for 12 plus years as an HR professional. So,
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Next to Jaya is Jason. So Jason is a partner and practice director at the Chesapeake Search Partners. So Jason is a former HR practitioner with 20 plus years and past president of the Chesapeake HR Association. Jason now leads the HR recruiting arm and HR consulting subsidiary at Chesapeake Search Partners. Jason holds a bachelor's in economics from the University of California, a PHR certification from UCLA, and a master's in HR development from Towson University with diverse experience in the fitness, hospitality, healthcare, and distribution industries. So you've been exploring your whole life.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
And then next to Jason is Angelica. Angelica is the Director of Business Solutions at Carroll Community College. Angelica has a 19-year career comprising marketing, communication, employee engagement, training and development, and HR. She holds a SPHR and CHRM CP certifications, SHRM as we all know it, and a change management specialist from the Management and Strategy Institute. She also holds a bachelor's in marketing communications, a master's in psychology, and a doctorate in business administration. So, again, way smarter than I am. And then lastly, we have Shannon Romeo. Shannon is our Chief Impact Officer here at Strategic Factory. With over 15 years in HR management, Shannon is a certified expert in continuous business operations and growth. In her extensive HR career, she has implemented 5S strategies, company-wide EOS rollouts, and created HR departments from the ground up. Shannon earned an economics degree from Stockton University and holds an SPHR accreditation. So, again, way smarter than I am. So, I'm just going to ask the questions, and they're going to give you all the insight. So, we're here to talk about core values. So, I do want to open it up with all of your current organizations or businesses. I would love if you would mind sharing to the group what are your core values in your company, or another institutional organization you worked with, what core values did they have? So maybe we can just start with Jaya and then go down the line here.
Fantastic. Okay. So I work for Blind Industries and Services of Maryland, and I'm going to run the risk of assuming that there are people in the room who doesn't know what that is. And so Blind Industries is a nonprofit organization in Maryland that trains, employs, educates, rehabilitates, and provides other services and resources for people who are blind. Maryland is kind of a misnomer because we actually have businesses, and we have a manufacturing facility in Raleigh, North Carolina, 2 in Salisbury. We have base supply centers, which are like Office Depot stores on military installations in Maryland, DC, Virginia, and an outlier in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And so we actually service more of the country than just Maryland. While we provide training and rehabilitation services to people who are blind, we also have manufacturing facilities where we manufacture military uniforms, Air Force, Space Force, which is a real thing, in addition to paper products, janitorial products, etc. We have blind people who work in our facilities who make those things, and we sell those things to make money to help further support our rehabilitation programs. So, that being said, we just went through a big reorganization process where we created a brand new mission and vision and core values, and so I'm going to be speaking from a place of newness today. So I have my list of fancy core values right here so that I can get any wrong. So our core values are the belief in the capabilities of blind people, empowerment, inclusivity, innovation, collaboration, honesty, and integrity. So,
Cool.
did I answer the whole
You
question?
did? Oh, yeah. Jason?
Thank you. I'm with Chesapeake Search Partners, and we have a number of lines of businesses, but I service the HR community from a search and consulting perspective, and I have a team of around 10. And I started with the firm in 2016 as employee number 2, and we went from the founders, 2 employees, to about 8 of us over a 2-year period, and that's when I sort of said to the team, you know, we don't really have this sort of foundational structure, and they're like, the HR guy wants to do this thing, and I'm like, yeah. So I go, let's talk about it, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that story later, but I invited someone to support that dialogue. We went off site, took a couple times to figure it out, and we came up with communication, consistency, commitment, and integrity.
Hi, so I'm here with Carroll Community College. We're right in Westminster, Maryland. And what I want to bring is a perspective from the Business Solutions Division, which is what I'm the director of, okay? And so we work with other employers in the county to develop their values and mission statements. And one of the things that I'm not going to reiterate because there's a lot of synergy and overlap between our core values, which is very cool, by the way. But we like to say that community is our middle name, right? And so that is inherently the highest priority of everything we do. And we're trying to, right now, change the impression that we give Carroll County, because right now people think Carroll Community College, I don't need a college degree, so I'm going to bypass them. And we offer so much more than that. And we'll get into that a little later.
Did you guys learn our core values on the tour? So I'll repeat them again. So can do, that is the skill and ability to do the job, or the interest in learning if there's a skill that you're missing. Will do, being the type of person who does what you say you're gonna do, when and how you say you're gonna do it. You follow through, you meet your commitments, you live up to your promises. Happy to is being the type of person other people wanna be around. You say please, you say thank you. You really listen to understand, not just to reply. Internally, we phrase it as no assholes allowed, and we really do talk about that with our staff, and it's very powerful. And the last one is building lasting relationships. If you bring those 3 things to the table, you will build lasting relationships. Our goal is that people who come into our organization, whether they're clients or whether they're employees, we want them to feel comfortable to take us with them when they go. So if we are working with a client, we want them to have such a great experience and feel our values through that client service experience that when they go to their next job, they say you have to work with Strategic Factory. And for our employees, we would love it if, you know, not everybody's gonna finish their career with us when they move on. They think fondly of us, they maybe become a customer, they definitely stay a, you know, connection in our network.
So with that, I know Jason and Jaya kind of touched on it a little bit, so if you guys want to add more, but kind of Shannon, more toward you, I have seen those core values everywhere. What strategies did, you know, when you guys were kind of creating those core values, like how did you come up with them? What strategies did you use to kind of figure out this is what we want our core values to be?
So we run the business on something called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a standard program for strategic planning, and they have a really well-defined exercise for core values. So I've done it different ways before, but I think it's been pretty similar to other experiences. The first thing that you do is, as a leadership team, you know, your off-site strategic planning, you make a list of all of the people in your organization who you're really excited to work with, who you feel like are your top performers. And then we kind of looked and said, why are those people our top performers? We did the same thing with our bottom performers, or the people that we struggled with the most. And so we wound up with this list of 70 or 80 words of why we loved the people who worked here and what our anti-values were from the people who were struggling or who we were struggling with. And we did this keep, kill, combine exercise to say, is this something that stands on its own that should be a value? Is this something that is similar to something else that's already on the list? Let's combine and pick the word we like, or let's kill it. It's not powerful enough to be focused in our values. And we kept going through that exercise round and round and round. Funnily enough, before the exercise, our values were can do, will do, happy to, but they were defined differently. And when we finished the exercise, we started talking about common language and how are we gonna market this internally, and how are we gonna market it externally, and we actually landed back on can do, will do, happy to, with just different definitions. And yeah, so our process was really to look at the people who were already on our team and why we wanted to keep them on our team or why we might be happy to let them go.
Angelica, I feel like you mentioned too, what you kind of do in your role is kind of to help businesses define their core values. If you wouldn't mind sharing kind of what are some strategies that you bring businesses through to kind of, figure that out.
So one of the first things that we do is we take an employee engagement survey, right? We ask them to assess like what are the things that they love about their job, what gets them up every day. And on the other side of that spectrum, what keeps them up at night, right? And so in evaluating the data that's tabulated from that survey, we're then able to identify those key terms, those key themes, and then that's the starting point for the conversation. I wish that I could take this and take it with me on my consulting engagements, which I will be stealing partially, thank you. And it's just a beautiful way to outline the structure of how you land on something that resonates with everyone.
Sure. Yeah. And Jason, you mentioned kind of briefly, the HR guy, he wants to do this, kind of, what were some ways that you kind of overcame those hurdles as you were kind of working through that?
Well, I knew there needed to be buy-in for sure with the partners and for them to like really understand why, the why behind it all. But they kept communicating their desire to grow and build teams. And, I noticed that very respectfully, there were some red flags in the way we were treating each other, just a little bit. And so they were very open to the conversation, and I knew, like I had mentioned before, an outside facilitator would support that. So they got it. Yeah.
And Jay, you said you recently kind of went through this process. What did that kind of look like for you?
We did. So it looked very similar to the process that Shannon outlined. I think where we deviated some was in making sure that we really connected to every level of associate in our organization. So as a mission-driven organization, we employ 40 to 60% of our team is blind. And many of those people have worked with our organization for 20 and 30 and 40 years. And so, as a part of this process, very similar to what Shannon described, we had consultants that took us through the strategic planning, and we did certainly evaluate some of our top performers and some of our low performers, but we also wanted to make sure we stayed really connected to the people who came to work for Blind Industries 40 years ago when we lived in a different world, the landscape was different, technology was different, and the idea of being able to work as a blind person was unheard of. Right now in 2024, it's still the case that up to 70% of all people who are blind are unemployed or underemployed. And so 40 years ago, that number was probably, very, very close to 100%. And so it was important that we did focus groups, that we facilitated with our associates who may not stand out as top performers or even bottom performers, but who have just been consistent and have been with the organization for a long time, but who are our mission focus group, which are people who are blind, and identify, what they thought the values of the company were. Like not what they should be, not what those fancy pants tag words are, but what did they connect with about the organization? If somebody asked them about what Blind Industries has done for them or what's their favorite thing about working there or how it's made an impact, what are the things that came out of that? And chiefly our primary value being the belief in the capabilities of people who are blind was a big one that came out of that. Having people say, because you believed I could work, I was able to buy a house and live on my own when I was never going to be able to do that, or I was able to afford to put my children through college when I didn't think that would be the case because I was blind. It really helped us ensure that that was one of our primary values.
That's great. Jason, I want to start with you for this next one because you've kind of seen it all as a partner at Chesapeake Search Partners. But when you're looking at whether it's recruiting, interviewing, applicant process, and we can all kind of share, but how do you tie in these core values into that process from the very start of that employee's kind of life cycle?
Sure.
How does that kind of tie in there?
So with our firm specifically, so this was probably about 4 or 5, right after we established our core values. I think the first thing that we established was a series of questions, some of them pseudo-behavioral based around the core values. And we're asking you know, if you're not our core values, it's just not gonna be, you know, you try to pull as much as you can. And from the core values, we have these set of questions. We're, you know, as a team, kind of picking those questions apart and asking them. But then we also immediately brought them into our performance evaluation process. So, you know, it's just integrated right away. And then, of course, it's all over one of our walls. It's very simply put. And then we just, you know, if we have a colleague that comes in to interview, they're going to see some of that information right away. But we don't overdo it. We try to simplify it as much as we can.
Yeah. Shannon, I mean, I recently was about 6 months ago hired, so I feel like I can even answer this, but if you kind of want to talk a little bit about our strategy with the core values and the hiring.
Yeah, so similarly, we really integrate their core values in our interview questions. We provide interview guides to each of our hiring managers, and we ask some of those questions in the screening process in HR. So one of my favorites, for example, is what do you need from your manager in order to be successful? We find that one to be incredibly powerful about whether they'll fit the management style of the organization based on how they answer it. But we have for each of our values questions that are integrated. There are a lot of behavioral, tell me about a time when, give me an example of type of questions that have been great for us. We also do a lot of it in our marketing, everything from very minor, it being something that every candidate sees in our email signatures and things like that. Like our core values have a logo. When they come in, we've tried really hard to make sure that our values are not this just aspirational thing on the wall that we hope to be, like the marketing matters, but that they have that experience right from checking in at the reception desk with Mari, all the way through every person that they meet, that they feel that it's authentic with every person. And then we also, you know, how do we get in front of people who are thinking about applying for jobs? We're at Towson's Career Fair yesterday, and every pitch of every student I spoke with who asks me about what it's like to work here, I go to the core values. That's how I describe the experience that someone will have, the energy they'll feel in the workplace. Interviewing still is as much about the candidate interviewing us as it is us interviewing them. They need to know that it's going to be an environment they're going to be happy, successful, tenured in, that they're happy to stay. And so for us, it's communicating it from the first interaction and repeating it in every interaction, even if you're not necessarily specifically calling out can do, will do, happy to, building lasting relationships.
Great. Jay, how about you guys? No, sorry.
I was gonna say one thing. One thing I have to admit is that probably one reason why I brought in the core values is because I needed an opportunity, I needed a foundation to call up my partner's stuff out. And they needed something to be able to call me out. And so that baseline of defined, meaningful, you know, that foundation was super key. And it's just a whole accountability thing, you know, it's just really made sense for us.
Totally. Yeah. Jay, what about you guys? Yeah.
So definitely, you know, including questions in the interview process that are reflective of the core values, being conscious of the experience that people have when they walk into our facilities. We're very, very mindful of that, from the, you know, the person that greets you at the front being somebody who is legally blind, and, you know, oftentimes when somebody walks into our building for a job, they may not have ever had an engagement with a blind person, period. There are tons of assumptions and predisposed notions that people have about that, and we start dispelling those right away. So we start kind of supporting their belief in the capabilities of blind people just in that space. I think with all of our other values, similar to how these leaders discussed, you know, we want our incoming associates to come in kind of committing to that or having that already. I think something that sets us apart is the belief in the capabilities of blind people. We're okay if you don't have that when you come in. We almost take that on the chin as a personal challenge, because it's very difficult to have that if you haven't seen examples of it or you don't understand what it looks like. And so it's almost more of a belief than a value, in that if you come in with the rest, that you have the ability to be collaborative, you're open to innovation, you have that honesty and integrity, allow us to show you why you should have a belief in the capabilities of blind people. And so if you don't come with that one, it's okay, because we've got the ability, we're probably uniquely positioned to help people develop that value. And so similar to how Shannon described when people leave Strategic Factory, you know, it's a sign of a job well done that they leave with a positive outlook. We feel like when people leave Blind Industries, if they leave telling anybody who will listen about the positive impact we're having on blind people in Maryland, but also expressing that blind people can do anything and that they didn't believe that before they came to work for us and now they do, then we've made an impact.
Angelica, I want to ask you kind of a little different also, you know, kind of this employee life cycle. What are some strategies that you have seen that kind of work as you're onboarding? Because if you don't have an onboarding process, you need to have one, first off, you know, but as an employee is kind of coming on board, they're training those first couple weeks, months, those, you know, big milestone indicators. How do you reinforce these core values? Like what strategies have you seen that work for kind of this reinforcement during the employee's onboarding process?
So how do we advise our clients to embrace that and lean into that
Yes.
strategy,
Mhm.
right? Is to leverage your values as that touchstone to manage expectations for what's encouraged, what's not going to be tolerated right up front, right? So the more open you can be and the clearer the tone you can set up front, the easier it is to maintain that relationship and cultivate that talent and maximize people's engagement while they're there.
Cool. Shannon, what are some stuff that we do here for that process?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be like ultra specific about a handful of things that we put in place. So the first thing that somebody experiences on their first day is an orientation with HR. I'm sure most companies do that kind of as a first thing, as a meeting with HR, but we've been really intentional about incorporating the core values into it through, I'm gonna say storytelling, giving visual examples of will do, of happy to, like how do you picture that in your mind? We're a creative organization, so we have a lot of visual learners that naturally gravitate towards working here. So there's a video we show that ties to one of them. There's a story we tell that ties to one of them. After that, they go through this whole experience of onboarding into the values over about 90 days. So once they've gotten that kind of picture of, you know, when we integrate Can-Do, for example, in that orientation meeting, we talk about the fact that the Can-Do has to be somewhat negotiable in the hiring process, to Jay's point. They may not know, or they may not have everything that they bring to the table. They're new. If they're a marketing person and they use Salesforce as their CRM previously to do their marketing automation, and we use HubSpot, we can teach them HubSpot. We can't teach them the will do, the happy to, so they have to bring that to the table during that onboarding process. And one of the things that we talk about in Can-Do is being honest about what you don't know. We have spent all this time deciding you're the best person for the job and invested in you. We're not gonna fire you now that you're here because you misunderstood an interview question and answered it differently than we would have expected you to, and now there's a Can-Do gap. So talking about those things and trying to remind them constantly of that. They then have 3 lunches with our CEO. They kind of join wherever they are in the cycle. It's a monthly lunch, so they go in the course of 90 days to 3 of them. And each of those lunches is Keith, our CEO, talking about what Can-Do, will do, happy to means to him. And in each one of those, he's tying it to that building lasting relationships concept. They get materials that tie to it as well. So they get a challenge coin for each lunch they complete. They get oftentimes a book or a piece of promotional material that speaks to it as like a visual reminder. So for Can-Do, they get a multi-tool. A lot of our guys on the shop floor, they love it and they use it and they keep it on them. But it's really just about that visual cue of what are the tools in your toolbox, how do you expand the tools in your toolbox. And then from an HR standpoint, the person responsible for recruiting them also does check-ins with them at 30, 60, and 90 days, a little more formally. We're doing those check-ins less formally with their managers, and we're integrating it immediately into that, like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable behavior, so that we're getting in front of them very quickly to say, hey, the way that you dealt with that attendance issue that you had or that training gap that you had did not align to our core values. So we try to really hit it on the first 90 days so that by the time somebody is working independently and autonomously, they're thinking that way in the back of their mind, and they can go when they have a difficult situation or a tough decision to make, they can go to that core values naturally and help that guide their decision.
Great. Yeah, the lunches are also free lunch, so I love it as somebody who's currently going through it. I love a free lunch on Friday, so it's great. Jay, what do you guys do as you're kind of, you know, onboarding that process stuff? How do you reiterate them? You know, you're in a unique situation.
Absolutely. So I did mention that a lot of this has been redo. So with our core values being one of the things that we've updated, we are slowly integrating it into the onboarding process for all of our teams. It looks different at different levels though. So when you've got, instructors that teach the blind, but you also have hourly manufacturing employees who use sewing machines, and then you've got members of the HR team. What the onboarding looks like varies across all those levels. We do incorporate it into the onboarding video that all of our associates see, and we make sure that it's a part of the 90-day check-in that they have with their leader. We have an established program in place for all of the members of the leadership team and people who come on in administrative roles who are new to blindness especially, to help kind of immerse them into our world. We have a 2 to 3 week immersion program where you come in, and it usually takes place during your first 90 days, and you spend 2 to 3 weeks under sleep shades, which are basically shades that cover your eyes, and you actually go through a compressed version of the core training program that our blind students do when they're in our rehabilitation program. Our rehabilitation program is a live-in program. They live in apartments that are downtown. They take public transportation to our location every day along with an instructor. And so by immersing new members of our team who don't have access to this right into that world, it kind of forces our values like fast and hard. It does help us have an idea early on how somebody's going to respond to our values, and leaning into the belief of the capabilities of blind people. And we haven't had anybody run screaming from the building yet. We've definitely had a few people.
But it can happen.
It can.
Yeah.
It
Which
can.
is why it's an excellent technique.
Yes, there's a portion of it where you're with an instructor and you've got sleep shades on and you're at Washington Boulevard and you're being taught how people who are blind listen to understand how to cross the street independently. And if you, I don't know about you, but typically within 2 to 3 weeks of starting a new job, you're not usually out on a corner with a cane, blindfolded, trying to figure out how to cross the street alone. And so it ties you to our mission and to our values very quickly.
I like
Like
that.
built-in empathy, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of how you, like, you even said you feel like you can teach that very, that knock on the chin. It's like, hey,
Right,
we'll
I'm
get
happy
there,
to
right?
show you.
We'll get
I'm not
there.
saying it'll be easy,
Yeah, I
but,
like that.
It's like the definition of talk the talk, walk the walk.
Oh, yeah.
My Gosh, that's
I like
incredible.
and you don't forget the experience. I mean, it was life-changing for me, and I still think back to learning how to flip a fried egg blind. Wow,
I like that.
it landed on my shoes.
Can I tack on to that?
Yeah.
So I think another exercise that a lot of us have probably experienced or recommend is that whole cross-training across your organization. And that rings true to this because it really lets you walk in your counterpart's shoes, right? So if you're ever wondering, why is this taking so long? Or, look at all this red tape you have to cut through. Why are you dragging your feet? When you walk in their shoes, you get it a lot better and you a lot more patient, right? So we had an Alzheimer's client who used to do a comparable exercise, but they didn't do it to their staff, and I think that's a huge missed opportunity. That sounds amazing.
Very cool.
Jason, when you kind of touched on it as like an accountability thing, when you're looking at performance management, how do you, they've been here for a while, 2, 3, 15 plus years, however long, how do you tie in these core values when you're kind of looking at somebody's performance, whether it's a fellow partner, whether it's, someone who reports to you, kind of across the board?
So we, our performance management sort of system that we have in place, it's pretty continuous. It's a little more structured mid-year and then end of year. And again, it's just the dialogue around core values, just continuously. And we do take some notes during the course of the year, but we're also facilitated by a coach on one of our teams that facilitates just conversation about it. And so I was going to touch on the onboarding piece. We also do kind of a 30 and 90 day, and during our weekly meetings, we're usually touching on core values somewhere. So I always say for us, we don't want to overdo it, especially because we're such a small team. But from a performance management perspective, there's usually no surprises when we're having conversations mid-year, end of year. And, but it's built into the documents that we have for our team.
Great.
Yeah.
Angelica, how about some strategies that you've seen or recommended to people about the, performance management and core values going to be tied together?
again, it just comes back to being that touchstone when you're managing, like Jason just said, when you're managing the expectations the whole time, whether you're being coached on something you did great and how you can improve or some opportunities for improvement, there shouldn't be any surprises, especially if you keep threading those values in the whole way.
I had one of my colleagues, somebody on my team kind of called me out on something really small a few weeks ago, but it was pretty key just to kind of get back in my lane and, you know.
What was it, Jason?
Right now. It's hard to find.
Specifics.
How much time do we have?
2 hours.
I like that. Shannon, what about long tenured employees? What are some strategies you've seen to, you know, because like I think we all have mentioned, core values is not something that's stagnant. It's, you know, growing, changing. As businesses grow, you need to change them. But people who have been here a long time, who may be different to them, what are some strategies that you use for kind of reiterating that?
So a couple of different things. One, I think it has to start with the top. So our EOS consultant has actually challenged us as a leadership team to openly rate each other on how we perform to the values in a group setting, which is not easy for some people, and we do it on a regular basis, so we've been through it twice. The first time we went through it was deciding our values and saying, does our executive team live our values? Because if they don't, we're not rolling them out. And we had some really tough conversations surrounding that. And then when we came back for our second year, it was talking about giving feedback to people. What do they do well? What's one thing you want to see them change in the next year in terms of that, like how they fit to the values? And that was really hard for a lot of us to go through, but I think that it was powerful to like reel us back in. The, you know, front line, whether it is employee to employee, like on a peer-to-peer basis, or managers to employees, we have a tool in our payroll system. I'm sure a lot of people do in their payroll systems. For us, it's called Impressions. We're in Paylocity, where we have each of our core values as a badge, and anyone in the company can award that to anyone. So managers will often give them to their employees for things that they've done, but it's not uncommon to see that, you know, Aaron had a flat tire and Melissa helped him change it, and they get that impression for that, so there's constant recognition of our core values coming up in our team meetings. So we do a monthly all hands that is much more, I'm gonna say, celebratory of what's going on, and then we do a quarterly all hands that is repetition of the core values, as well as how is the company performing financially, what are the initiatives that we had in the last quarter and how did we do to them, and then what are financial goals and initiative goals for the next quarter. So those are things that we've done. We did find that our long tenured employees were really upset when we started this whole breakfast lunch kind of concept of the challenge coins for the new hires to get to go through. One, they wanted the free lunch. Two,
It works. It works.
they really felt left out of, like, they were seeing these people get these things they were earning from these meetings, and they felt left out of it. So we recently just completed a series of condensed lunches or breakfasts for every department. I think we have one team left, our installers, because they're hard to track down since they work in the field. But to bring them through and let them have this abbreviated version of it that was a little bit more advanced for somebody who's been in the company a long time, to talk about not just the core values and what it means as a new hire with fresh eyes, but what does it mean now that you're here, and how are we trying to challenge you to grow, to specialize, to advance yourself, to educate yourself, to work as a team. So that was something that was really powerful. And then the last thing I'll add is just, again, EOS, I initially was, this is a flavor of the month. I now am an evangelist of it, and I love it, because we've managed to stick with it for 2 years and have it be really transformative in our business.
Oh, wait, go back and say what it was again?
EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating
Right.
System. They encourage these quarterly meetings, they call them 5-5-5 meetings, 5 minutes on what happened in the last quarter, 5 minutes on what's coming up in the next quarter, 5 minutes on professional development. You take the 15, the employee takes the 15. So if you're each exchanging about 5 minutes on those 3 topics, you can have a lunch or a breakfast or a cup of coffee over it, and you can align that person. I started doing that with my team recently, so it's still a little lumpy because it's new, but we've done, I think, 3 of those meetings so far, and that's been really good for me to understand where people want to go in their own careers, and to be able to tie that back to core values if that's coaching that they need.
We
Can
also.
you repeat that again? I'm sorry, the 5-5-5?
What happened in the last quarter, what's coming for the next quarter, and what are your professional development desires?
We also, when you give impressions during our celebration day, put everybody who received an impression in a bucket and we raffle off a couple,
Target gift cards.
Target
or
gift
add
cards,
some
whatever.
gift
So it's
cards,
one of
yeah.
those things where as an employee, we are excited to be giving impressions and receiving because it's an opportunity, to, get Starbucks or something like that.
We
So-
also too, like, we have a rock star of the month, that's a peer recognition program, so the whole idea is managers nominate, but we want employees to vote on who wins. And they get some swag and some things like that, but you get nominated because you align to the core values, and you get rejected as a nomination if you don't, so I think that's pretty powerful. And then at the end of the year, at the company's holiday party, all of the rock stars of the month get to walk around with their sashes like they're Miss America, I'm Miss July, whoever I may be. And they get voted on for the rock star of the year, and then the top impression getters as well. They get recognition, they get gift cards, the rock star of the year gets a cash bonus, like there's a whole bunch of things that go into it. But that's all core values based, and that starts like at the front line. Again, there's a management committee that nominates, but it really is run by the employees. They vote, they select, they recognize their peers.
Yeah, I like it. But I also got a little gift card in our last celebration day, so again, I'm on the receiving end and I enjoy it. Jay, what about you guys with your long tenured employees and stuff, kind of reiterating these things as people have been through it? Like, and again, maybe you don't know yet because you just went through it,
Right.
but
So interestingly enough, I think something that came out of the focus groups when we were facilitating this is that we probably have more work ahead of us getting new associates and newer team members ingrained into our core values than our long tenured employees. And I think part of that is just because the landscape of what we do and how far blindness has come and the process of rehabilitation has changed so much that our long tenured employees are the most loyal, dedicated, these are people that lay down in the street for BISM if they had the opportunity to. They're just very, very loyal, and so they feel connected to our core values in a way that it's not as easy to get our newer associates to connect to. They weren't with us when we were the absolute only place where you could work if you were blind. Now, Amazon has automation that makes it so that they can employ people who are blind, and we love that. That is a win for my organization, but it's, there's a different level of commitment and I think tie to the values. And so we actually use our long tenured employees to help newer associates feel connected to the values, by sharing things that are more story oriented, like Shannon mentioned, so that they understand where we've been as an organization, in addition to where we're going, because we have lots ahead of us, but where we've been is really important to how our values were established, and our long tenured employees are the absolute best champions of that.
That's awesome. All right, final question for me, and we're gonna have them all answer it, and then we'll take some questions from you guys. Angelica, I'm gonna start with you because I feel like you have a unique perspective on this. How, if any of you guys do this, but how do you pitch your core values to potential customers, clients, prospects, the people that you're, kind of the business that you're getting? How do you kind of represent these core values to your customers?
So from the college's perspective, or how I advise our clients?
Either, let's say both.
I'll answer
Do
both.
both. Yeah, let's do both.
So when I'm approaching new business from the client's perspective, I zero in on that community element, right? So how we supported your organization in the past thus far, because chances are we have, since we've been around since the 70s. And here are things that we've done with success. Here are things we'd love to do based on what we understand now that we've studied up on the organization, right? And we take that, we do apply it in terms of recommending that our clients do the same thing, right? It's really understanding who their target audience is. Does their target audience need to resonate with their values? And if so, explain to me the ways that needs to happen, and then we can look at strategies to employ that.
Great. Jason, what about you guys?
I just thought of this. My quick story is when I graduated college, I grew up with California Pizza Kitchen restaurants for 12 years. And the first day of training, they talked about ROC, and ROC was their core values: respect, opportunity, communication, kindness. So I remember it after all these years. So I sort of grew up with this core values thread. And what they did was, and I think I kind of mirror some of what they did, they would communicate ROC. It was so easy and cool to talk about in their collateral to employees, but also they had it on the website, and they would tie it in to just some of the dialogue, and it hit the customers. It eventually hit the customers. And so if I were to, my answer is to sort of, we kind of try to do the same thing. So if there's some level of dialogue with a new client or existing client relationship, we're talking about our core values some way. Again, not overdo it, but we may just pull one, piece of it and elaborate. And then we would say, and we feel the same about you. It's important for us, we want it to be important for you as well. I will say we've had some relationships in the past, a client maybe that didn't treat us so well. There was something that happened maybe with one of my team members 6 months ago, and I protect my team in a way with our core values. So I'm able to go back to the client, say, it didn't really work, it doesn't feel so good, and we talk about it. And then if there's a breakup, then there's a breakup. Yeah.
Jay, what about?
Yeah.
So there are two things that come to mind for me when I think about customers. So first, with our core values, right, in addition to be representative of who we are as an organization, they're kind of our commitment to our associates. They are also our commitments to our customers. So we're committing that this is how we're going to engage with them and operate with them. I think we, as a nonprofit, mission-oriented company that also needs to make money to support the mission, right? It's a lot of moving parts. We need our customers to purchase from us. As a preferred provider for the state of Maryland, every state organization is supposed to purchase copy paper from us. That's just one example. At our location in Hillthorpe, we make and manufacture, cut and package Maryland state copy paper. So if you're in a state building, that's our paper, we made it. But we can sell that paper to anybody. We make janitorial supplies. The state is supposed to buy it from us because we're a preferred provider, but we can sell it to anybody. Additionally, we don't want state agencies to buy it from us because we're a preferred provider. We want them to buy it from us because of the mission and the values that they're supporting. So our sales team is trained to communicate, not help the blind people and you have to because the state says so. This is our mission and these are our values and this is the positive impact we're having on the state of Maryland. So you can buy this paper from Office Depot, or you can buy this paper from us, and this is the impact you're going to be having on the lives of others. So our core values go really far in helping to encourage people to shop with us for what we consider the right reasons.
I like that. It's almost more like a partnership than like a, hey, the guilt trip.
Exactly. Let's do this great thing
the old
together.
Sarah McLaughlin video, the commercial where it's like, oh, don't show me that, but we
For
don't
5 cents a day.
Yeah,
you
5
can
cents a
yeah.
day.
No.
Shannon, what about how do we communicate here to our customers?
So marketing organization, we're incorporating it into our marketing materials, our sales exchanges with clients as much as humanly possible. Again, we've given our core values a logo so that we can make it front and center. The concept of it being something that people can connect with and having a common language around it, I think helps a lot too. So a lot of our employees do it naturally. They'll get an email from a customer and their response will be happy to. They do it, they integrate it in their language. We try to run different things that engage different types of people, and then they get really proud to show off the work they've done in tours and things like that. And I think they naturally integrate that can-do, especially in the customer service experience, by showing them our capabilities, our functionality that we have, the breadth of services that we offer. It's in the sales presentations. Like if they get a slide deck to go and present to somebody, it's baked into it. If you go on a tour with Aaron or Andrew or Ashley and they give you that tour, they're gonna talk to you about our core values as one of those introductory pieces of that tour. So we just really in the repetition. We also have historically done a lot with our employees to just keep it top of mind with them so they keep it in conversation. So we have a program we call Stallers, which is our company store and our company money that they can earn things through. And with Stallers, they can purchase a number of things. We also give them a number of things like swag, and some of that swag will have that Can Do, Will Do, Happy To logo on it, so that they're at that golf tournament or that client meeting and they're wearing those core values. They're not just wearing our logo. So that's really, I think, helped bring it to the forefront of the customer. But I think the big thing at the end of the day is we're really focused on our Net Promoter Score. So if anyone is not familiar with that, if they're not a marketing-minded person, Net Promoter Score is that survey that you get at the end of a service that says, would you recommend us to a friend? We want that number to be really, really high. We want a lot of promoters in our database. And we talk about the concept that someone who experiences our core values will be a net promoter. So we use that as a measure of whether we're living our core values to our customer, and we talk about it from a quantitative standpoint, often, at least quarterly.
Cool.
Can I just say,
Yeah.
to Shannon's point about repetition and the way that their values are just baked into everything, including employee communication and engagement. I worked for Strategic Factory. I had the honor and pleasure of working for Shannon 9 years ago. And I still, 9 years later, respond with happy to or can do or will do to emails. Like, it became very quickly an ingrained part of how I communicate and how I make commitments to other people. And I get compliments all the time on that. Like, people are pleased as punch when you respond that way. And it's 100% because of my time here.
I swear I did not pay her to say
She
it.
did not. She did not.
So we have about maybe 8 minutes left, right around there.
Around
Right.
10.
10 minutes, great. I'm sure you all have a million questions for these guys, whether it's for all of them, whether it's for one person or in particular. You know, please don't all yell at once. Yeah.
So, just with, social media trends and how you talk to people has kind of changed over the course of time, at least from my perspective, business development and financial wellness, with that being said. From a core value standpoint, and this could be for anybody, what has changed, from core value depending on how long you've been with your organization, what it was to maybe what you're implementing now in terms of being able to cater towards your fellow employees as management level to your other people. It doesn't matter who, just anybody can speak up and address that, because things have changed over time, and maybe we've had to tweak our core values a little bit from a standard standpoint, from that. So whoever.
Anybody jumping at the bit? Yeah.
So may I ask for more context for the question?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Just from my perspective, I always feel a face-to-face interaction is still the best virtue. Yes, technology has made our lives easier, virtual presentation, doing things kind of behind the scenes. I go to do an impromptu visit. I'll knock on a client's door at a moment's notice, not even really have an appointment, not really to bother them, but just kind of make that face-to-face, that introduction. So from your standpoint, core values have, it has that trend from maybe from the 90s, from 2000. How is it nowadays in terms of how you structure your organization?
I
If
would
that
say,
makes sense.
yes, it does. Thank you for the additional
Yeah.
information. I would say it still comes down to meeting people where they are, right? And figuring that out in a way that you can exude those values that you have established at the corporate level. And I repeat this all the time, so forgive me, but it comes down to managing the expectations, right? And so whether you have been with the company for 40 years or you've been with them for 4 months, right? As long as you set that stage and it's built, it's threaded in through all of your communications and the work that you do and the way you communicate with each other, right? That is inherently going to, it's going to change over time, and it should, especially with the people, they're retiring 10,000 a day and will until 2031, right? Figuring out ways to leverage your core values to then capture some of that legacy information. Speak to them in a language that they understand.
Absolutely.
Meet with them in a way that's comfortable for them. Don't force the Zoom on them. Don't force the in-person, right? And that changes by generation.
And also, again, I'm not the expert in any of this, but I do just kind of, one of the things I heard too, I think that the technology and stuff has almost made it even better. Our email signatures are standard across the board. In our email signatures are our core values. So you could get an email that's typed out like happy to, then you'll see the person's name with our core values in the email signatures as well. So it's one of those things that's like utilizing that technology to just reiterate the same thing. I don't know if anybody else wants to.
I think for us, because we just went through this process of kind of reassessing and redoing, we did find that we had to make some changes to our core value so that we were staying up with the times. So accessibility is really important to us as an organization that serves blind people. Innovation is a word that's one of our core values now, that when they created the core values the first time, I think really like 45 years ago was the last time it was reviewed. Innovation wasn't a buzzword, it wasn't on anybody's radar, and it didn't even mean the same thing back then. Right, exactly. So we recognize that while you want your values and your vision to be very solid and to stand the test of time, we have to change with the times to meet people where they are and to keep up with the way that we engage with people and communicate. And you mentioned social media. you know, we didn't have a social media strategy 45 years ago, and so we did recognize the need to make those changes to kind of adjust to the times.
Appreciate that, thank you.
So I learned a lot from the panel, so thank you so
Yeah,
much.
great.
And similar to the members of the panel, we just had some updates to our core values as well. And our growth stems from a lot of M&As. And I think core values are something that we're continuously working on living and breathing. And we're actually still working on our culture project. How do we live and breathe that, especially coming from an M&A world?
I'm
And
happy to start on
anyone.
that. So I've been here 10 years. In the 10 years that I've been here, we've acquired everything from a one-person company to an established 30-year business with 25 employees. Some of those people have been really happy about the M&A. Other people have not been happy about it. And working in a larger business is maybe not what they signed up for. It has been an uphill battle for us. And we always have to look at it and say, do we go to this whole Rome New World Order piece where we come in on day one and your brand is dead and your values are dead and your company is dead? Or do we respect what's there and integrate them slowly? We've had success with, I'm gonna say like a mid-range approach. Certain things have to change day one. So we put these people that we're acquiring through as if they are new hires. They go through all of our new hire processes. They have that same experience. And that's the slow integration. From a brand standpoint, there are certain things that we say, as of today, we don't want you answering the phone as, to pick the example, AA Signs or Spokes Marketing. These are companies that we've acquired in the last 5 years or so. We have to make that shift. You shouldn't be answering the phone that way. Yes, there's a lot of things that your organization did right. There's also a lot of things that we do right, and we have to take best of breed from both, is that conversation that we have a lot. So you bring fresh eyes to the organization, tell us what you see that you think we should be bringing with us from your organization. We did integrate a factor of AA Signs, for example, is the most recent significant acquisition that we did. That was in December of 2020. Their core values were not, I'm gonna say, super well defined, but they did have a decent performance appraisal process that had some values elements into it. And one of their core values from their thing was think it through. And it was just the concept of complexities of the projects. You know, we're custom manufacturers, so are they. And trying to find a way to put that think it through piece into can do, will do, happy to give them some comfort. But we did a lot of treating them like new hires, and that helped a ton. But 3.5 years later, we still have challenges with some people that, you know, they worked there for 30 years. They're not interested in necessarily making the shift, and for them, it is coaching. It is the storytelling. It is connecting them back to what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it's also not being afraid. Like, we have a gentleman who I would say is a pretty big issue from a core value standpoint that came with one of those acquisitions. I use the core values in every conversation I have with him, whether I intend to or not. He actually participated in the leadership development program that I teach for the company last year, and right around the time that we were doing the core values. And I brought him in and I said, you're not showing respect for the other people in the class by showing right attendance, by engaging properly in discussion. You're behaving like an asshole, and there are no assholes allowed in this conversation. So I need you to not participate in the leadership development program anymore if you can't make that shift. So I'm just really, and he ended up self-selecting out. He still works for the organization. He's decided he doesn't want to be a manager of people. He wants to be an individual contributor, and that's okay. I'm meeting him where he is, but he is hearing the values from me in every conversation. That M&A thing is such a challenge.
Does everyone know what M&A means?
I'll be the one to say it. I just learned what that meant, so I know. It's okay though.
So we have our facility in Raleigh, we actually acquired years ago, and I don't know that there was a strong focus when they initially did that on incorporating that organization into our core values. So when I came into the organization 2.5 years ago, they used the term redheaded stepchild.
Wow.
And I was mortified that there was this sort of outlier out there where they were never pulled in, you know what I mean? So while it's a little bit different, I know I had to be very strategic about kind of redefining what living and breathing even looks like. Like, living and breathing our values looks different in my Baltimore facility than it did in my Raleigh facility. I had to set reasonable expectations for myself and like reasonable benchmarks and say, okay, down there, living it and breathing it might be like, how do I get them to stop seeing themselves as a separate entity? Or if they're a separate entity, how do I get them to see it as a positive way to contribute as opposed to being a redheaded stepchild, you know? So give yourself grace, and I would say like manage your expectations about what living and breathing it looks like at each facility or with each M&A.
We have time for about one more question,
Thank you.
if anybody has one. One more. Yeah, sorry, I saw his hand first.
Okay. I'm here as part of the workforce organization in the state of Maryland, and I think most people realize the challenges of sustaining our workforce and what's going on with it. And so we're here talking about core values. And one of my concerns and one of the strategies that we're looking at now has to do with the can-do. But what do you do with that I can't do right now? Okay, there's someone that can be happy to do, will do, but right now, I can't run your print copier machines, I can't do this, I can't do that. I could probably do it, but I just can't do it right now. So how do you feel about that person and comparing them to someone who walks in and says, I can do that? And then trying to make the hires, and then looking at the apprenticeship model of trying to have employers embrace this thing, saying we've got to take on the responsibility of actually helping them can do.
Jason, I think you touched a couple of times just on the accountability aspect of it, so I don't know if you want to kind of, talk a little more about that. And then
Yeah, I mean, I'll go as
Thank you, appreciate it.
far and deep as I can on this. You know, and I don't want to oversimplify what I'm trying to say, but I think the accountability piece, and just there being very open communication and transparency. I was thinking about the M&A dialogue too, a little bit too, about the whole empathy piece. Someone mentioned empathy up there. So really my response to that would just be the communication, the transparency. I don't know if I have a potential solution for what you're saying. It is an issue. And I understand, kind of the things that you're going through, but I don't know if anybody else has any feedback.
Are you, Scott, when you say can't do right now, do you mean like they don't have the established and necessary skill level currently?
Correct, the knowledge, the experience, they come in basically at zero, but they have some other things they bring to the table, and you've selected them maybe for an interview, but they're competing against folks that have a lot more knowledge and experience. Who do you hire, and we know what employers have been doing. How do we get that shift to a different strategy of let's bring in someone who can't do, and maybe they'll be the better productive worker.
So I'm gonna put my small business owner hat on, and I will say, any day of the week, I will hire someone with aptitude before skill, because I can teach skill, right? My husband is the best at what he does. He can teach skill, rather. It's about that aptitude, right? So if you have that attitude, that can do, will do, happy to, yeah, I don't know how to do it right now, but I'm willing to learn, and I'll show up on time and look you in the eye and shake your hand and not be on my phone all day. Hired.
Yeah, it's about taking a chance.
Yeah.
We always take a chance or a risk on everybody that we bring on the team. To the points up here, it's,
And the EOS system as well also has a strategy called right people, right seat, which I don't know if I haven't been here long, but I've heard, our executive team will move people from department, from role, based on, you have the happy to, you have the will do, but that can do maybe doesn't quite fit. And so, Shannon, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo Angelica's statement wholeheartedly of I would much rather somebody who is a will do, happy to person that doesn't have the can do. I'm really trying to integrate when I'm working with a hiring manager about who they're hiring, or when I'm working with a manager about who they're retaining. Are you making that decision only based on can do? Because if you are, that's a short-term decision, and I need you to understand that. Either way, whether it's they have the skill and they don't have the values fit, or they have the values fit and they don't have the skill, and that's what's making your decision, it's short-term. If they don't have the skill, we can teach them that and we can solve that problem in a short-term capacity. If they have the skill and they don't have the values fit, it's short-term because we're gonna end up firing them or they're gonna self-select out because they don't fit into the organization and work well with others. So I'm totally behind that. The right people, right seats concept is constantly saying, let's define the seat. If the person did these 3 to 7 things and was accountable to these 3 to 7 things, 80% or more of their time, the company would achieve its goals. Those are the things that we have to be able to get them to do from a can-do standpoint. And if you're well-suited to a role from the interview standpoint in sales, and we find that as you're in the practice of that, you're not a hunter. Maybe you don't belong on the BD team going out and generating leads. Maybe you belong on the account management team, nurturing the people that we're already working with and growing those relationships. We can shift you to the right seat and teach you the 3 to 7 things you need to be accountable for in that right seat. So we've always kind of taken that philosophy, and I'm just trying to integrate it more to say, you know, you're keeping this person based on a can-do decision. They're able to do the work. No one wants to work with them. They're gonna be gone by the end of the year. Stop investing.
And
Let's
what-
make an alternative plan.
And what you said, like, I can't do right now, great. I'd rather you say I can't do right now than I can't, right?
Yeah.
Because the right now at least is demonstrative of the willingness to want to.
Now, as a state employer though, I would challenge that the onus is on us, right? You mentioned apprenticeship. If you're going to invest your time into under-skilled but willing, you have to have the programs and tools in place to do the training and do the teaching. Otherwise, you're doing your company a disservice and you're doing them a disservice because, you know, if you're committing, I'm gonna pay you maybe a little bit less than the super highly skilled person, but I'm gonna get you those skills, you have to have infrastructure in place to get those skills. Yeah.
Sadly, we do have to end this amazing conversation. I just want to say thank you to all of you, and thank you to our panelists. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I'm sure if anybody else has any burning questions, I'm sure they would love to, talk to you afterwards.